right, so, listen. The elements of a poem can help me analyze how the poem is built, how the poet created the poem, or the elements can explain to me what the meaning of the poem is. Structure would be how the poem is built, or the meaning, and you already know what that means. What does the poem mean? Look at our elements. Don't say anything out loud and ruin it for everybody. I want you to think, which elements do you think would help teach me or give me information about how the poem is built? Think. Don't raise your hand. You're just going down the list. Which ones do you think are going to help me understand the structure of the poem? Don't say. Try to talk to your group. There may be more than one.
Line, stanza, meter, repetition. The repetition. Rhyme, the stanza.
The line, stanza,
The
meter.
And the line.
Right?
No. Yeah.
Yes or no? Yes or no? Do you think the stanza is going to help?
Yes.
The stanza is definitely going to talk about how the poem is built. Do you think rhyme is how it's built?
Yes.
Yesterday we did the rhyme scheme, A, B, B, A, B, C, B. Do you think that helps me understand meaning?
No.
So it's going to be structure. Sometimes they build a poem that rhymes. Sometimes they don't. Mood.
No.
Which one?
Meaning.
Okay. The mood, when I determine the mood, that's going to help me figure out what's the poet trying to get across. What's the poet trying to say? And the mood or the tone or the feeling has a big part in that. All right? What about line?
Structure.
Okay, that's part of the building of the poem. What about meter, the beat?
Yes. Structure.
All right, listen to me. Think. Don't say anything out loud. We're talking about the beat of the poem. The rhythm that the poem has. Would the rhythm help me understand the meaning, or is it just one of the ways that the poet built the poem?
One of the ways.
It's going to be structure. All right, let's go to theme.
Meaning.
Easy, right? Now, let's think right here. This guy. First of all, think to yourself. Don't say anything out loud. What is repetition? We talked yesterday, and there was an example in our poem yesterday of repetition. There's going to be an example in the hike today of repetition. One of the poems you're going to do today. Don't say anything out loud. What is repetition? What does that mean?
Structure.
Alex, what is repetition?
It's like
Listen to my question, though. I didn't ask for that. I asked, what is repetition?
when a line gets repeated.
Okay, when there is a repeating line. Yesterday, and we're going through this because this is a tricky one, I think. Yesterday, we talked about how you got to really pay attention to a line that is repeated in a poem. Because if the author cared enough to repeat that line, it's probably important. We wrote, somebody reminded me yesterday over here, we wrote some repeating line poems back in the fall. And that repeating line became our what?
Main
It
idea.
became our main idea. And all our other lines in the poem were what?
Building.
What do we call it when they add to the main idea? Listen to my question. What do we call it when things... Y'all aren't listening. You're just trying to holler answers at me. They became our details that supported our main idea. So if an author, a poet, cares enough to repeat a line and have that repetition, it could very well be that he or she is trying to whisper to you, this is what this poem is about, so I'm going to repeat myself. Might not always be the case, but in our poem today, our repeating line, our repetition is going to help us infer the main idea of this poem. That repeating line is going to add to our meaning. Do you think sometimes there might just be a repeating word and it's just kind of like rhyme and it adds to the structure?
Yeah.
This is yes, this is no. Which one are you?
Yes.
Yeah. Repetition can kind of go in both. But I'm going to go ahead and just give you a heads up that today it's going to be right there. And it's going to help us infer the meaning of our poem. So here's your task right now. Get the two poems. I put the hike and I put the sea turtle at your spot. Here's what you're going to do. I'm going to talk while you gather. You're going to read, and you're working by yourself for a second. You're going to read the hike and read the sea turtle, and you're answering questions. I like how you're listening, most of you. There are some questions that deal with structure, and there are some questions that deal with meaning. The first thing I want you to do is just answer the questions. But then I want you to be able, when we go over these in a minute, and when you talk them out in a second with your table group, I want you to be able to tell me, is that question helping me understand the structure of the poem, or is that question helping me understand the meaning of the poem? Do you understand what you are doing? All right, go.